Yeah.
Okay, so Stephen, you are here today. Tell me a little bit about why.
To speak about the issue in gun violence, support the event that's going on here today, and for this guy, Andrew, my son, who was shot 22 years ago and lost his life because of an illegally trafficked gun. A very familiar story that happens, thousands and thousands of times across this country, where somebody gets a hold of a gun who had no business having one in the first place. So I do this to honor his memory and to honor my efforts to at least reduce gun violence. It's just an absolutely devastating event when it happens to your own family. It never goes away. All you do is you pat down the scar tissue, years and years after these things happen. And when you read about other events in other parts of the country, like down in Florida, Parkland, or recently at the high school in Texas, it tears a little piece of your heart out, because before those folks do, what they're going to have to go through in enduring the loss of a child, a violent removal of someone from your family. So that's why I'm here.
Do you feel like in the past 22 years, has anything changed? Do you feel hopeful?
Lately, yes, because of the kids in Parkland. They showed me the kind of energy that I associate with the anti-war movement back in the 70s. In my own efforts over this, we never got any significant legislation passed, but I think we educated a lot of people, and we may be finally, as a result of a lot of people's efforts, between education and these horrible events occurring at the schools across the country, we may be reaching a tipping point. My gut tells me that we're getting there, and that we may see some significant results in November when we have the congressional elections, and hopefully we get some people elected to Congress that will address this issue seriously with more than just thoughts and prayers.
So I have another question. I know that there was a documentary made about you and your family, and
Justice
about
That Heals.
Restorative justice.
Yeah.
So you forgave the person who killed your son. Can you talk
Mario
a little bit
Ramos.
about that?
And what
Can
about?
you talk a little bit about that?
He's out. He got out 2 years ago after he'd been in prison for 2 years ago. He's trying to live a productive life. I personally don't think he'd ever be involved in something like this again. It was an impulse decision he made in the blink of an eye when he shot into my son's car. He told a priest who's become one of my best friends in life, Father Oldershaw, that he just wanted to scare my son and shoot him in the shoulder. He shot him here from point blank range, and the bullet went straight through him and went through his heart, in its trajectory, and it killed him. His heart had 2 holes in it, and it killed him.
And how did you find it in your heart to forgive such an...
That was a long process, a long, long process. I didn't at first. My wife, Andrew's mother, was ahead of me, and the rest of us in the family were. We didn't quite understand where she was coming from. But then, especially when I got educated in this issue, and I discovered how you got a whole generation of kids that are set up for violence, to be either the people doing the violence or the people being victimized by the violence. You got a whole generation that's set up because guns are so easy to get a hold of. And so there's a lot of victims out there. Some of them are sitting in prison, and some of them are in the graveyard, and some of them are in wheelchairs for the rest of their life. It took a long time. Forgiveness doesn't come in the blink of an eye. I looked at the landscape, the late 90s, the crime happened in 1996, when I looked at the landscape, and I said, this could happen to anybody. I remember an incident in high school where we were seniors in high school, and some guy picked a fight with me, and he was a lot bigger than me. And so I remember I blasted him in the face, and that was pretty much the end of the fight, until he pulled out a box cutter with a razor blade sticking out the end of it, and I said, that's it, the fight's over with, you win. And if that was 1968, if it had been 1998, that wouldn't have been a box cutter, it would have been a gun, and I probably would have been killed, and he would have gone to jail for a long time, and a lot of lives would have been profoundly affected. But the gun wasn't there, so nobody died. And that's the difference in the landscape today. Whereas the guns are everywhere now, and in past years and past generations, our authorities did a much better job of keeping guns out of the streets, out of the wrong hands.
Thank you. Thank you.